So it's a mixed campaign, 24-25, wasn't it, for Accrington Stanley? I think on the one hand, they're a club with, they're one of the smallest clubs in the division with one of the lowest budgets and not a huge amount in terms of external investment. And with that in mind, Football League survival, you certainly can't turn your nose up at that, given much of the club's history in non-league since its reincarnation. At the same time, it was also the club's lowest finish in the Football League in their current sort of guise, if you like, finishing 21st and securing survival on the penultimate weekend. And I think perhaps a fan base that have seen the most successful era in the club's entire history, you might say, culminating in back-to-back top half finishes in 2022 in League One, would probably be left wanting a little bit more. And I think that's what we've seen. Some really nice individual performances from Accrington Stanley last season, like Chesterfield away in November and Newport at home in April, where they scored some nice, well-worked goals that shows the potential of what John Doolan can do. But there's also a feeling that some of that optimism, some of that fire, some of that spirit that was real part of the club in terms of its rise in a previous era, it's dissipated a little bit. And I think the club's in a position of trying to get that back. So plenty to get stuck into then on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. If you like what we do here, you can do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would really help us out. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by my guest for this evening, Callum Gibson from the Raw Milk podcast of Accrington Stanley. Gibby, thanks so much for joining us. What's your feeling about where Accrington Stanley are at as a club right now?
Yeah, I think you summarised it well, Gab, a moment before in terms of for the size of the club, the size of the town, budget-wise. Everybody knows that Accrington Stanley are not, a giant in the Football League, and I'm quite a pessimist, and I'll always take third bottom at the start of every season. The way we went about it was a little bit frustrating. We haven't won a 3:00 Saturday home fixture since October, which doesn't bode well going forward. And I think that there's been a little bit of an irritant for a lot of people because obviously, the majority of we don't travel in great numbers, so the majority of supporters has only had a bit of a slog at times at home. But the away form has been fine. Just the lack of consistency, as you touched on. I mean, we can do it. The Chesterfield 3-0, arguably the best we played all season.
That was that goal, by
1-0.
the way, was lovely, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was a perfect sort of not smash and grab. That's not the word, but the way we just soaked the pressure up and broke and scored 3 great goals. The second coming of Sean Worley has again been a reason to be positive, and some of the young players are trying to break through. I think, given the start, it seems a long time ago now, that first 9 games without a win, I think there was a lot of, as Sir Alex used to say, squeaky bum time. I thought a lot of people thought we're in trouble here.
Yeah,
we're leaking goals left, right, and centre. But as you said at the time, we were still making chances, and I think as we tightened up a little bit throughout the season, it sort of balanced itself out. Would have liked safety a lot sooner, but to do it with back-to-back away wins in the last month, that just sums the season up, really. Where did that come from? So a mixed bag, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we'll start at the top of the club. The obvious news is that Andy Holt has taken a bit of a back, what's the word, a back seat, if you like, from the executive operational side of the club. So I imagine a lot of operational responsibility now is going to go to Warren Eastham as the CEO and to David Burgess, who's the managing director. I'm just wondering, how much trust Stanley fans you feel have in those two people to run the club on a day-to-day basis.
I think when the announcement first came out, it was a little bit worrying because, we're not a North West Counties League outfit anymore. This is a professional football league club, and putting people in charge who've never been in that kind of environment is a bit worrying. But the things that Warren's doing on the commercial side have been quite well received. He's trying to make those links with the town again. Small things like, getting businesses to give season ticket holders discounts, things like that, putting more things on for the kids. And he just seemed to listen. In terms of the Burgess as chairman issue, I think it's very much a case of as you were. The king is dead, long live the king. He was sort of Holt's number 2 anyway. And I think Andy Holt will still be, I think he'll be more involved than people think. I think he'll be a bit of a backseat driver, and that relationship with David Burgess will be quite tight. And I don't think we've seen the last of Mr. Holt, shall I say?
Do you feel like a takeover is going to happen in the next 5 years, or what do you think?
I
Because
just
Andy
wonder.
Holt has said in the past that I'm fed up, I'm going to sell the club, but you never quite know where he's at with all that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, he wakes up in the morning and sets the agenda for that day, and by bedtime it's changed again. Well publicised, he put us up for sale. In how can I be diplomatic here? Put us up for sale in not the most dignified of circumstances with one of his infamous Twitter rants. But the problem you've got is twofold. I mean, Accrington, unless I'm mistaken, there's no secret billionaires hiding in Accrington who will take the club over. That leaves you with two options. You've got sort of a consortium type thing of fans, which never really ends well. You do need funding at this level. That's just a fact. And the other side is, you're then relying on outside investment and people who, have they got the best interests of the club at heart? So, I've been a very outspoken critic of many of the things that Andy Holt has done, specifically towards the playing side. But you can't argue with what he's done infrastructure-wise.
Of course, yeah.
The Crown Ground is a tidy League Two stadium now. There's nothing you can't get there. You can get at other grounds. It's not this sort of. The ground used to be worth 10, 15 points a season on its own. That's gone. It's a lovely setup now, and that'll be a legacy for him when he does sort of pull away completely. I don't think we'll sell. I think there's been the occasional sniff. I believe the people who had the sort of on and off Dagenham dealings were interested at one point, which again, seeing what's happened to that, probably a good thing that didn't go through. But one of the things that people seem to be raising is if you want to sell, it's got to be an attractive proposition to buy. And I'm sure we'll touch on the academy closing at some point later on, but that I don't think makes it a more attractive proposition. That you're one of only two, as I believe, in the 92 to not have an academy, so you're not making, future players for more profit. Basically, I think it all goes back, Gab, to the old Dave Whelan quote at Wigan. He was asked, "What's the quickest way to become a millionaire?" And he said, "Become a billionaire first and buy a football club." So I don't think we'll sell in the next 5 years. I'd be pleasantly surprised if it happened, but I don't think it will.
Yeah, I think it's a tough call, isn't it, closing the academy? Because on the one hand, I can kind of understand it in terms of the investment in the academy, not just the players, but the coaches over the course of the year. That's going to be a six-figure fee, I would imagine. But then, on the other hand, you're also maybe missing out on the opportunity, firstly, to develop players that you can sell on in terms of high potential assets. And secondly, the club at Accrington Stanley is a more attractive proposition for potential buyers with an academy rather than without one.
Well, I think the season before last, the whole season ticket push was based on this thing they called Operation Next Gen. And the season tickets were sold on the basis of we're going to bring our own talent through. It's going to be a homegrown thing. That's the future of the club. And then within 12 months to go, actually, no, we can't afford it. It's quite the U-turn. You only need the occasional player to come through. Ross Sykes came through, went for 7 figures. Great defender. Happy to see him, win the league in Belgium recently as well. Though his karaoke skills still need a bit of work. And there have been players come through. Your Josh Woods, your Alex Hendersons, etc. So it was sort of working. I understand it is a big expense for a club our size, but one thing that's confused a lot of people is, could we not just have kept it open for at least one more season? Because the Football League put a certain amount of money in. Hyndburn Borough Council offered to put, I think, 150,000 in. So it would have been, we could have run it for at least one more season with the club putting substantially less money in, which I think is a bit of a strange gambit. And a lot of those players, a few have gone to Blackburn, a few have gone to Category 1 academies. So there was some talent in there. It's a strange one. I mean, and you wonder whether it's sort of the start of death by a thousand cuts. What's going to be the next thing to be cost cutted really, because Andy Holt has said he's not going to continue funding the club. he's going to put a maximum of $250,000 a season in, which sounds like a lot, but as you know, isn't.
No, it's not us. I mean, I would imagine that if you had £1 million playing budget, that would be easily the smallest in the division. So,
By far, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you're going to other than that. I mean, obviously, in terms of season ticket sales and ticket revenue, I don't know quite how much that's going to add up to. So, yeah, I think it is going to be very tight for the club at the moment.
I think there's things they're trying to put in place. So it's no coincidence that every one of the friendlies is at home. Rotherham, Everton, Blackburn, Money Spinners. Season
You've
ticket
normally
wise,
had Burnley in the past, haven't you?
yeah, Burnley, Blackburn, quite a lot of the time. Yeah, I know a few people who have been season tickets for a long time and haven't renewed, and it has gone up quite sizably in price this year as well. Which
Right.
again, you can argue, and I do argue, it was far too cheap for too long. So they are still very reasonable prices still.
Yeah.
But for a poor town, a sort of £50-60 increase is quite a lot, really. So a lot of people have not renewed. We never sell that many season tickets anyway. You're looking at, this is a season when just up the road, Bury and the Northwest Counties got 9,000 on for a game. That's 6 divisions below us. That's an extreme example because they were being promoted, but even the Conference North, as you know, teams like Scunthorpe dwarf us really. So the budget, even before this came out, was still going to be one of the smallest. David Burgess came out the other day and said the Liverpool money from the FA Cup run, he said that went towards the running of the club. His quote was, we can't just go out and buy a striker, which again is strange because you don't, as a fan looking at that, you go, surely you don't budget for cup runs. You can't budget for a cup run. So if that money is needed to keep the club going, that's a little bit of a worrying sign. So all in all, not to be the harbinger of doom, it's very much a Stanley thing that we win the league now. It's always been the way, but I just think for me, there's a little bit of stagnation. The crowds have been in the Football League 20 years next year, and the crowds are they've sort of stagnated. You pick 1,500 die-hard sort of home fans might swell a bit on a good season, but there are clubs. My local club in the Northwest Counties gets similar, so it's always going to be a struggle. But we'll see how we go. We'll see the signings that come in. Hopefully, we can do what we always do and pull some sort of non-league rabbits out of the hat, and we go again. As you'll know, doing these with every club, on that opening day, if you win, everyone thinks you're going up, and if you lose, you're not going to win a game. I can vividly remember the first League One season after going up, and we lost 2-0 to Gillingham on the opening day. And two quotes that stick with me are: one, we cannot survive in League One with the back two of Ross Sykes and Mark Hughes, both who went on to be incredible servants. And somebody else said, we won't, genuinely straight face went, we're not going to win a game. This is going to be embarrassing. We won't win a game. So you never know. Fingers crossed, but I'll take third bottom on goal.
I'm sure you won at Burton the following week or something like that. So
yeah,
wasn't too bad. So in terms of John Doolan's first full season, I think it's fair to say there have been some real high points, like I touched on earlier, and some moments where in the final third there's been some nice passing moves, and you think, yeah, there's some potential here. But then there's also been some low points as well. Certainly earlier in the season with those defensive issues, and you sort of improve that incrementally towards the end of the campaign with like that resolute defensive display at Warsaw to secure survival. But is there a feeling that Stanley fans were kind of hoping for a little bit more?
I think so. I think you always want a little bit more. And as you alluded to before, we've had, I always have the argument that pound for pound, there's us and Burton, I say the two most successful clubs pound for pound over the last 20 years. You can argue that, but to have 4 promotions, be 3 leagues higher than we were, you do get a taste of success. And 80% of the crowd have only known relatively good years. So I think that does, John Coleman used to always say, you can raise expectations, but you can't lower them. And that's the problem we're having, really, because it was still, if you're, from a neutral point of view, if you know nothing about League Two, you look at that table and go, that's not a bad season for Accrington, really. But you do want a little bit more. And I think at times, I remember losing 2-0 at Morecambe away. And I thought, this is poor. We're in real trouble. And Carlisle again, Carlisle we lost to on in December away. I think what's difficult to gauge is, did we stay up under our own steam, or is it because Morecambe and Carlisle was so terrible for so long? Because both those two sides found a bit of form in the last couple of months, and had that form started in January, I think we would have been in real danger. But John can only play the hand he's dealt with. It's always difficult doing the David Moyes thing, coming after the goat, if you will, to use the word on the street. It was always going to be a big job for him, as James Beattie found out to his cost. The first time John Coleman left. And
I mean, funny enough, though, James Beattie actually, his results were actually okay. Like if you look at purely results, it was playoff form from like October onwards in the 13th.
Yeah, he got a higher win ratio than Doolan when you look at it, and that was within him. You can argue that was within him, a worse setup, sort of club wise.
Yeah.
That really was.
I know he's unpopular, Beattie, but I think his record was actually all right.
Yeah, no, he is unpopular for reasons we'll go into on a rainy day. But
okay.
but yeah, that was a similar kind of thing. People just, it's so hard to follow on from something that will be sort of unmatched again. We're not going to get 4 promotions again without a few relegations first. It's not going to happen. Just isn't going to happen. So that was difficult for John, but I think that continuity. He was already there. He'd been a coach. He'd won the league with us in 2018. He'd been a captain of a league-winning team in 2000. I think that helped a little bit rather than getting someone completely new in, because you do have that bit of support and backing already, and the players already knew him. And it is very difficult to go from. There's many who've tried it, to go from being sort of the friendly coach to now I'm the gaffer. I say jump, you say how high. It's a very difficult. It's a substitute teacher to head teacher sort of shift. It can be difficult, and I think he's learned from it. He's had a full season now, and he also had sort of half a season the year before to sort of play with, sort of 10, 12 games. So
I mean, I kind of agree with you, Callum, although I'd got the impression that during the previous regime, John Doolan was actually a bit more distant. I think he was always very much the technical coach, but not necessarily somebody who did a lot of the man management with the players, which I would say was a bit more John and Jimmy. That would be my sort of reading of it. So I don't whether you've got a different.
I think one of the keys that helped us ultimately survive in the end, and this is not a dig at John Doolan, who I love, but I think that the greatest signing we made was getting Jed Brannan as well, because you've essentially got 2 managers rather than a manager and an assistant. And Jed had already done the hard graft of keeping Morecambe up the year before, so he knew what it was like to operate in that relegation battle and to operate with a small budget in that kind of field as well. So, and then it also meant that when John Doolan sadly was off with bereavement issues, Jed Doolan can step in. It's not the same as the assistant. But he's been a manager. He knows what to do. Like, it is slightly different dynamic. So that sort of, I think, helps us as well.
Yeah, I like Jed Brannan, actually. I think he's quite a talented coach. I did watch his Morecambe side play once or twice, and I felt like they looked like quite a tidy, well coached side, which isn't always easy with a bottom end budget. So I do think that he could be, a useful person to have on the coaching team.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's again, another ex-Stanley player. He knows the club. It's a friendly face. People are fond of him. It's one of my favourite players as a kid. I remember him getting a hat trick at Dagenham, I believe, away.
Right.
Yeah, and then he was involved in some scheme to try and get him to play for the Cayman Islands. That sort of fell through. But anyway, I digress. Good coach, good manager, and again, that helps with. I think Jed's very good with the young players as well. Your Josh Woods again, your Hendersons. If you're talking about signings that did really make a difference, though, where sort of John and Jed earned the money, one of the keys, definitely Jake Batty from Blackburn, just sort of transformed the defence, really, because the defence was, until the new year, very, very sort of a poor area, really. But that's what we're going to have to do going forward. It's going to be, a lot of clubs have started to get the signings in. It's going to be loans. It's going to be youthful players. It's going to be players who will sign quite late because they're seeing, can I get a bit more somewhere else? That's always been the case. It wouldn't surprise me if we sign a glut of players relatively close to the start of the season. We don't tend to get our business done as early as other team because we just can't afford it. And these gambles don't always pay off. Jimmy Knowles this week's gone to Altrincham, came from Boston. Him and Mooney, like a York and Cole type thing for Boston, came in, hasn't worked for him. Nice Slabber hasn't worked for him. So,
Mm.
and that wasn't, to sign Boston, who are arguably a bigger club than us still, to sign their front two, it isn't cheap. And a gamble like that is, for us, it's a big loss. So we have to be clever in the transfer market. And I would like to see, I would like to see more relationships really. It's common sense really to build that relationship up with Blackburn and Burnley. The 5 miles either side.
Mm.
If there's a
Yeah.
good player, if there's a good young player at Blackburn or Burnley, we should have them. It's a no-brainer for me that. But we'll see how we go again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lad at Burnley called Joe Boris in midfield who I'm a big fan of. So, if there's a scout, Aki.
Although again, you just do never, as you know yourself, you do never know because men's football is so different. The example I always use is 2 or 3 years ago, Joel Mumbongo came from Burnley,
Oh
and
yeah.
my Burnley supporting, and again the direct quote was, "He will be like Pele in your division." And that was the quote, and
No.
he was God bless him. For us, I hope he has a great career, but for us, he
Yeah,
was
of course.
diabolical.
Yeah, because he'd got on the bench for Burnley a lot, hadn't he, in
Yeah.
the Premier League season the year before, and then just
Yeah,
didn't work. Sometime, that's
where we're at,
life for Aki, isn't it? Right, let's have a look at the squad then, Callum. So the goalkeeping position, I wanted to get your thoughts on Michael Kelly. He'd obviously had a stint at MK the year before, a relatively experienced goalkeeper. How do you feel about him being your number one going into next season?
It's a strange one because at the start of last season, he looked really ropey. And then Billy Krellin obviously came from Everton and took the number one spot. But then sort of Krellin dipped in form. And then the sort of flourish we had to the end of the season was Kelly being back in. So if you can keep that kind of form up you had for, say, the last 5, 6, 7 games of last season, I think it will be sort of, a good thing for both of us. Because one of the things, if you look at Accrington squads historically, it's been a long time since we've had a proper number one.
Well, you had Ian Dunbar didn't you, in
Mm.
the title-winning squad in the conference, and then was it Chapman you had in the
Chapman? Probably your last belonged to us permanent keeper, number one. Yeah. A lot of loan keepers. I mean, one season we had something like 7 or 8 loan keepers because we were cursed.
Yeah. Baxter was pretty good for a year, wasn't he?
Baxter was very good, yeah. And again, they are a mixed bag, but we've done well. We have, if you look at the track record, James Trafford's gone on to great things. Bettinelli was very good. Baxter, one of the best, I think. These we do get it. Rob Elliott, of course. We do tend to have quite a good track record with these young keepers. Billy Krellin has been released, I noticed, so it wouldn't surprise me if he popped up again.
Well, that'd be an excellent signing if you could get him, because he was England under-20s, I think, a few years ago. So clearly he's got some potential.
Yeah, but again, you never know, because I didn't really rate James Trafford when he was here, and I thought it was a terrible signing for Bolton. And then lo and behold, he keeps 20 clean sheets, takes off from there, and it's an England
defensive records of English football all the time.
And at Burnley, it's unbelievable what he's done. Fair play to him. I think Kelly, he's not a bad keeper. He's a solid keeper, but we need to get a good number two to keep him on his toes, I think, is the key. Because I don't think young Isherwood is quite ready yet.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, Isherwood was actually being released. So what I've got down on my notes, if this isn't correct, there's a lad called Rogerson who's been offered pro terms, but I don't think he's ever actually played for the first team. So no idea.
Yeah, those are sort of your Virtu Trophy players, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
Give them a bit of a breeding and see how they go. Yeah. But yeah, I think we definitely need a strong number two to give him some competition. But it just doesn't overly worry me if he's the number one. It's.
But then, Callum, you've kind of got to pick your investments quite wisely as well. Whether if you're a club on one of the lowest budgets, do you necessarily invest too much on a strong backup goalkeeper, or would you say actually let's invest in other areas?
But even the loans, as you say, have an element of risk, because the number of times we'll take a player on loan and they've got clauses like must play a certain percentage of games. So you get lumbered with a terrible loan keeper who has to play contractually. That's no good for us either, really. I think if you gave most fans a choice between a striker or a goalkeeper, I think they'd go striker. That's where every fan of every club will say the same thing to you. But we do need a striker. I mean, the chances that went begging last year, unbelievable. And those first 9 games, we could have won 5 of them.
I
So
saw you at Cheltenham on Tuesday night that season. I thought you played quite well for large parts of that game, and again, just maybe weren't quite ruthless enough in front of goal, which sort of
yeah,
epitomised it, doesn't
and
it?
I think it's a big season as well for a lot of the young strikers. I think for your Alex Hendersons, your Josh Woods, you're sort of all you're 21, 22, 23. You're no longer the young player.
Mm. Yeah.
Especially Josh Woods signed a new 2-year deal, which a lot of people, great lad, top lad, but a lot of people raised eyebrows at that because he hadn't really set the world on fire this season.
Mm.
Um, so I think it's a big season for him, and he's such a great lad around the place. I hope he does come good. And Henderson's shown flashes of brilliance now and again.
Mm.
I think it's a big season for those two, and also for Kelsey Mooney, who I wouldn't say had a terrible season. I think we were expecting a bit more from him,
Mm.
but he's obviously the strike partnership with Knowles has gone now. He'll be expected to lead the line, more independently. I'm hoping he can get, a good. I'm expecting to at least 15 goals off him, really.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to Mooney. I wanted to have a look at the defence. I'm expecting John Doolan to deploy primarily a back three this season because that's what he's used for most of last season. I've got Devon Matthews on the right of a back three, and when I've spoken to Aki fans, they've said, "Yeah, this lad's a talent." So yeah, I'm really excited. I think that this could be a big season for Devon Matthews.
Yeah, he looked good. He looked good straight away. He slotted straight in. He was high flying at Curzon Ashton, and one of our ex-players, Adam Morgan, I think is involved at Curzon Ashton, said, he's the best defender in non-league. You should sign him. And he's just, he looks like he's played football league all of his career. I think he'll be the next, if he carries on, the next sort of big money, the new sort of Cam Burgess type thing, and go on to bigger things. I think he's a great signing, great player.
Yeah, absolutely. Farron Rawson is the one that I'm curious about because he was actually absent from the team sort of towards the end of last season because it was Sonny Al Joffrey who kind of got the nod. There's sort of contrasting reports as to the reasoning behind that, but I think that when he's I think when everything's sort of smooth, if you like, I think he can be a very dominant aerial defender at this level.
Yeah, I agree. He's not going to pull up any trees, but he's a very good sort of mid-table League Two defender. He'll do a job for us. Again, you can't take a player on loan from Manchester United and not play them.
Yeah.
For some of the reasons we said before, and also you don't want to damage that relationship as well. And Sonny Al Joffrey, to be fair, was very good in spells. But yeah, I've no concerns about Rawson. I think he's a solid League Two player, and obviously knows Jed well from Morecambe. So yeah, I've no worries about him at all. I think he's a decent player, to be fair. I quite like him.
Nice. And then there's Ben Ward. I think did you get him from Burnley in January?
Yeah, Ben Ward.
Yeah. So what did you make of his second half of last season?
Yeah, again, looked okay. Took a while to bed in. A lot of these players, you're hoping now they've had a bit of a run, we can sort of kick on the front foot from next season. They'll know each other a bit better, have a full pre-season, which makes such a massive difference. But again, solid, should be okay for us. We look a better player with him in the side, I think. The one, if you're talking defenders, I mean, I'd love to get Jake Batty back again, but I don't think it'll happen. But as I say, Ward, Rawson, decent enough operators at this level, I think.
Yeah, I think at the moment probably looking at one more defender to come into the mix because at the moment the other one I've got down is Josh Smith, who I think has just come through the academy and he was having a loan. I think it was Matlock last season, so that's a big step up. So definitely in terms of defensive depth, pretty straightforward. You're going to need one or two more.
Yeah, we just need bodies race basically because there's been quite a few seasons in recent history where we've looked okay, and then the suspensions and the injuries just kill you. The balancing act you've always got, and again you'll see this with all of the smaller clubs, is do you go for a small quality squad or slightly less quality and flesh it out? And we went for the quality small squad once, and just by January the wheels just came off. Injuries left, right, and centre. Ideally, you want not necessarily two players for every position, but I think for the back four, you want someone at least who can play those if needed.
On that subject of injuries, then, Callum, do you think, because it was definitely a theme in the relegation season in League One, do you think it's an aspect of the club that the club needs to look at? And do you think that it's possibly a challenge because you've got a 3G pitch, haven't you? That's very good at holding up in the winter and all that kind of thing. But I believe that there's an argument that it increases the likelihood of injuries.
Possibly, it may be worth investigating. I think it depends on the type of injury, really. When players do get injured, it does tend to be sort of the more sort of J-Rich Bagaloo sort of season enders, rather than sort of the ones that are out sort of 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see the stats sort of before the pitch was put into afterwards. But obviously, the medical facilities are a lot better as well now
Yeah,
with the whole investments, which sort of
that's
offsets
good.
that a little bit. We've been through quite a few different physios recently as well. Maybe that has a bit of an impact, but hopefully that'll settle now with the chap who's there now. But yeah, I don't necessarily think it's the pitch. I just think some of these challenges we've been so unlucky. Like innocuous challenges that 9 times out of 10 wouldn't do anything, end up rupturing cruciate ligaments and things like that. I'm gutted about J-Rich Bagaloo actually, because when he was fit, he was decent.
Yeah.
He had a good engine, a good strike on him as well as being an excellent defender. And if he could have kept fit, I think he would have played higher than League Two. He looked a bit of a Rolls Royce at times. So hopefully, what I will do is from the start of the season, I'll be logging the injuries and seeing whether there is a 3G pitch, because it's a good
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah, it might not be. It might be more of a opposition challenges kind of thing. But certainly, yeah, it's good that the club's got a bit more in terms of the sports science regime and a bit more in terms of handling the fitness side. So hopefully that bears fruit. Right wing back spot again. Conor O'Brien, definitely a talent that I think Stanley fans were very excited about last summer. Off the top of my head, I think he spent large parts of this season out of the team. Has that been injury, or has that sort of surprised people a little bit?
I think again he's fallen prey to some of the loan players really,
Right.
some of the signings. But again, when he first broke through, he did look like a really exciting prospect. Again, he looked like this guy's going to play quite a bit higher. He didn't quite reach those levels last season, but I think he's very much. I think he could possibly tighten up defensively, but I think going forward he's really exciting. When you're breaking, so that wing back style of role, he looks very sort of positive. Got a good engine to him, good crosser of the ball as well. He's one that I would like to see get a bit more game time actually, to see if it levels out for him. But yeah, again, it won't be the most expensive player on the books. A good option to have, I think.
Yeah, that's the other thing, because it comes back to this conversation earlier about developing players that you can sell on. Because Donald Love, I would actually class as a more experienced player now, as opposed to. And I think that so if he has a great season, it will be helpful for the team right now, but it wouldn't necessarily be helpful in terms of
Yeah,
nurturing
I would
saleable asset.
I would say Donald Love is the curate's egg really. I think he's one of the more divisive players on the terrace. I'll be honest, I don't always rate him as highly as some other people do. I think he's had a
Right.
bit of very much a patchy season, and I can't forgive him for that sort of essentially open net miss at Anfield, which would have been given us a memory for the eons. But I'm sure he sees it every night and wakes up in cold sweats as well. Back post far header, you've got to bury those, my friend. But yeah, I don't think Donald Love has achieved the consistency that we were expecting when we signed him. When we signed him, I thought that's a bit of I wouldn't say a coup, but it was a decent signing.
Mm.
Somebody again who knows the level, played for a similar club, a bit of a poaching. I don't think he's at the heights that he or we would expect, but he's certainly in there. He can do it when he wants to, and he got a little bit sort of tidier towards the end of the season as well. But I think there's more to come from Donald Love this year,
Mm.
hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope so. And also Conor O'Brien, definitely an exciting player who could come right back into contention. Left back, wing back spot in terms of the squad at the moment is an interesting one for me, because I'm not sure whether Ben Woods got moved there through circumstance and he's really a midfielder, or whether this could be a sign of things to come.
Let Ben Woods play wherever he wants. Let Ben Woods go in goal if he wants. Ben Woods is a fabulous player, a really, really good player at that level, and exciting to watch. I think it was sort of more sort of necessity rather than design. He got put there initially, but he's taken to it like a duck to water. And again, you've got that balance of he's a semi-decent defender, but going forward as an extra attacking body, brilliant. Great strike on him, great engine, great crosser of the ball. And
Lovely goal at Warsaw, wasn't it?
oh, unbelievable. Yeah. He's got that in his locker, and he's done that a few times, had a few screamers. But also he's very much like a Duracell bunny. You know, he's got that engine, and it will get stuck in. So he's got a little bit of everything really. He's sort of an archetypal lower league player that fans tend to take to. And I think again, we're expecting big things from him.
Yeah, hopefully he can be a key player. Where would you play him if I was putting you in the manager's position? What would you do with him?
I think left wing back. I think
Okay.
left wing back. Stick him in behind a good pacey winger, and then that left side would be unbelievable, really. Because, like you say, he's got that. He's got the legs to do that. It's quite a demanding role, especially on heavy pitches in this league. But he can do it. Left wing back with an attacking sort of intent, if you will. Give him that free roam and get him on all the set pieces as well. Between him and Sean Morley.
So midfield, Liam Coyle has built a reputation for himself as being a bit of a hothead, a bit of a fierce challenges. Would you say that he's curbed that aspect of his game in the last season, or would you say he's still very much that one?
Well, we spoke about potential sale of the club. I'm going to buy the club, and I'm going to finance it by Coyle booking any time, betting on that every game. Because genuinely, it's like you'll see on the Stanley account whenever it'll say 64 minutes, Coyle yellow card, and all the comments are like, "Is water wet?" Basically, he's more cards than Clinton's is the phrase I like to use. He's curbed it a little bit. He's sort of the master of. It's a skill to get booked so often yet so rarely get sent off. I find the master of the tactical foul. And again, you can't get away from him. He is a bit of a hothead, but you'd rather have that than every team needs a hatchet man. Every team needs that player, and I think he is that for us.
Yeah, I guess at the moment, Seamus Keneally, who's been just a phenomenal servant to Accrington Stanley and one of the best, greatest footballers of them of the modern era. He's leaving the club this summer, and I suppose I'm wondering, as well as sort of paying testament to him, whether you think Liam Coyle could be the one to step into that leadership group, if you like, with sort of a Sean Wally, who's obviously quite a bit older.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I think, as you touched on, them one of the big things, apart from Seamus Keneally being an amazing, very good footballer, and also had a bit of a second wind towards the end of last season as well when he was coming back in the team. It's a very, very young team. So you are looking towards people like Liam Coyle, who's not even that old himself, to be the more experienced heads. Yeah. And I think it's, given the nature of the game, I think it's good to have a midfielder who can do that as well, because obviously they're involved in most aspects of the game as well. But yeah, I think he'd relish something like that. I think long term, if he stays with us, he's the kind of player that you could envision being captain one day, just because of that sort of blood and thunder style of play that he has. And he's never going to win a Ballon d'Or, but he'll always endeavour himself to the Clayton end with the way that he plays. And one day, like you say, my good friend Jason is adamant there will be a Coyle hat trick one day. And it's going to be the equivalent when Tony Hibbert finally scored for Everton. People are going to tell the grandchildren about it, because he's not got the best shot on him, shall we say? Loses a lot of balls out of the ground, but it's coming.
Oh, do you know what, Callum? I used to play football and I never score. So when I do, everyone else, when they score, they're like, "Yeah, nice." And when I score, I was like running off into the corners, and
booking the open top bus. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. But I've got a lot of time for Liam Coyle.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dan Martin, I think it looks like he's one that's hasn't yet confirmed whether he's staying on. He didn't play as much as he would have liked last season. I'm not quite sure whether that was down to injury or selection. Would you like to see him staying on as somebody who I think's come through the youth ranks?
Yeah, I think he's a great player, great little player. Played against Chesterfield on the last game of the season. Played really well again. It's quite interesting because through the course of our conversation, we've mentioned O'Brien, and now we're mentioning Dan Martin. We've touched on Josh Woods and Alex Henderson, who we'll come back to. It just seems so surreal to be talking about these players in the same breath as the academy's closed.
Yeah.
But Dan Martin again. He's quite a small fellow, physically not great in stature, but again great engine. I think it's quite nice for him to have a bit of time with someone like Seamus Keneally, an experienced player, to guide him a little bit. I'm expecting, given the budget cuts and the budget restraints, I think we will see a lot more of him through necessity, really.
Mm.
And I'm looking forward to seeing how he turns out. But I think out of all of the young players, he's certainly one of the better prospects there, I think.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Number 10 role, I'm wondering whether there's an argument for Alex Henderson to step up and become a bit more of a first choice, because I think, again, as much as Sean Wally comes into that leadership group because he sets great standards with the way that he trains, I also do wonder if he's the one playing behind the front two, if that's how John Doolan operates. It does kind of get in the way of Alex Henderson and maybe limits how much he can feature, and possibly you'd want Alex Henderson to have that big season because he's one that you could sell on if he goes well.
Yeah, he's got a great strike on him. He didn't score many last year, but the ones he did score were mainly outside the box, sort of wonder strikes. Grimsby away sticks in my head. But yeah, he does get sort of lost sometimes in a busy sort of forward setting. I would like to see him have a run as an actual striker, whether it be the front two or the front three.
Oh, so you'd consider Alex Henderson an out-and-out striker or a forward?
I think he could do. Yeah, I think he could be an actual out-and-out striker. We're not going to do that. He won't do that. He will sit behind the front two, I think.
Okay.
But he could do it, and it's nice to have that option. I have seen it when we've been chasing games, and he has brought Woods and Henderson on as strikers, so he can do it. But again, similar to Dan Martin, I think through necessity we'll just see more of him, because we're not signing 5, League Two starting brilliant players.
Yeah.
We're going to have to play these young players because they're still on the books and they're still taking a salary, and we still need to get our money's worth out of them. And then long term, as you say, if that gamble works out, the club benefits financially. So I think that's going to be the factor driving a lot of the squad choices as well.
I mean, from what you're saying, I'd be surprised if the playing budget's much more than £1 million this year.
I think we'll certainly have that. Morecambe, depending on who you believe, Morecambe possibly had a slightly lower budget than us last year. But this year,
because they had very extreme uncertainty and
extreme circumstances, which again I hope they solve. But there's only been a handful of clubs ever like us in the Football League. You're looking at us, Morecambe, Dagenham used to be quite similar. Barnet possibly might have a similar playing budget to us, but there's not. It's even the jump up to someone like Carlisle, their playing budget will be infinitely bigger than ours. So it is there are, as I've said many times, there are Northern Premier League clubs with comparable budgets. So it's always going to be a big ask. So because of that, you're looking at count how many sort of bodies can we get, but also it's the wages, not just the transfer fees. It's the wages that'll cripple us, because that £250,000 up to £250,000, that goes nowhere. And if he's not going to put any more money in, you do wonder where that's going to come from, because the season ticket numbers are not great in League Two comparison. They are for the size of the town, but as a League Two club, they aren't.
Yeah.
Away fans, it's not like in League One when we could budget on a Sheffield Wednesday coming every week, or a Sunderland, or there was always 3 sides of the ground away fans. It's a big money spinner. You've got a handful of those in this league, but again,
you've lost Bradford, haven't you? So I mean, Bristol Ravens are kind of,
Yeah, I mean, lost Bradford, gained Oldham, sort of like for like in a way. But your things like Crawley, for example, no disrespect, they bring in 50, as we do to them. It was interesting to see. I'd never thought about this before, but Dave Burgess was saying in his interview the other day that depending on who you get in the cups, like we often make a loss on cup games. Like if we draw something like, again, Crawley at home and there's no interest, it can cost us money to put those games on, which is an outrageous situation for a professional football league team to be in, really, when it's costing you money to actually play the games. So I was actually delighted, not at the way they've done it, but you've seen this thing about the League Cup. They've had to put a preliminary round in because there's 9 Premier League teams in Europe. So rather than going into the first round of the Carabao Cup. Us, Oldham, I think Newport and Tranmere have to play a preliminary round. Now, obviously, it's vile again that they're changing the lower leagues to accommodate the Premier League. But for us, it's actually worked out okay because it's Oldham. So if it hasn't been drawn whether it's home or away yet, but home for us, one of their first games back as a league club, there'll be a lot of interest from them. They'll bring 2,000, so that's worked out for us. But I don't think people realise just how precarious the finances are and just how much money it costs to host league football in this day and age.
Yeah.
So again, the reflection on the playing budget, it's going to take a toll. You're going to be looking at free signings. You're going to be looking at academy dropouts. And the problem with that is you end up signing a lot of players who've not played at that level. And as Jimmy Knowles found out, it is a much bigger step up than people anticipate. I know the gap between the leagues, some people say, is closing, but it's still a much bigger gap than people think.
Yeah, certainly is. I wanted to ask you about those attacking areas then. So we've mentioned Sean Wally, Alex Henderson. I think the key player is going to be Tyler Walton. Would he be the pick of the recruits from last summer for you, Callum?
Yep, absolutely. Tyler Walton, again, fantastic player, key goals, one of the more exciting players on the ball, one of those players who gets the crowd on the feet, which I think every team needs. One of the few players last year you'd arguably pay to watch in spells, harsh as that sounds. I'm glad we managed to keep him, to be fair, because he was one of the sort of leading lights, and there were rumours that people were looking at him and sniffing at him. So we can keep hold of him for the summer and start the season with him. I think it's almost as good as a new signing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but whether there's an argument for actually cashing in and using that money to reinvest in other areas, because again, that's partly the life of Accrington Stanley, isn't it?
I mean, it is. One thing again, you can give the current regime credit for is we now have players who are contracted, so we do get something. It used to be in the hand-to-mouth days that we would sell players for 30,000, 20,000. Yeah. Now we're getting players going for seven figures. Your Burgess, your Sykes, your Caden Jackson. We've had, they're undisclosed, but they're in that ballpark. We've had big, selling fees, and also, the sell-on fees as well from some of those players have been impressive as well. So we are, if players do leave, we are getting adequately compensated, which is something. But again, you take out those goals, you take out Tyler Walton's goals and assists. Is the gamble of losing league football? It's a strange one. It's not one I'd like to sit and work out, because it would have been, it would have been disastrous for us to drop out of the Football League. I couldn't see us coming back for a long time, and that's the risk we take when we sell any of our players, sadly.
Yeah, especially with its with two up rather than three up. There's always that risk that you. So I think in terms of the attack, I mean, if I look at Josh Woods, who you mentioned earlier, Popula, who I think is only 17, got a few appearances from the bench last season, Charlie Caton, Kelsey Mooney as well. I mean, is it Mooney the big one that you're kind of hanging out on, hoping for a bigger season from?
Yeah, the things like Caton as well. It's interesting. I'll be honest with you, I've genuinely forgot about Charlie Caton, which is weird because when he signed, Chester were gutted to see him go, which is always a good clue when the other team are gutted to see him leave. He's another one, Charlie Caton, who I think Conference North to League Two division step up without a proper pre-season, without gelling with those players, it's difficult. So it's unfair to judge him really until this season kicks off. But Caton and Mooney are the big two, and Mooney, as you say, especially, I think, having had that season under his belt, got a few goals, not done terribly, but not set the world on fire. I think he's the one we're hanging our hats on. He's going to be the starter. It's just a case of who plays with him, really.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it could be a front three of Sean Wally, Tyler Walton, and Kelsey Mooney, or it could be that Alex Henderson comes into that equation somewhere.
When you say it like that, it's quite a potent attacking lineup. It sounds quite good to me. That it's a side I'd be excited to see play. Sean Morley. I mean, what can you say about Sean Morley? That hasn't been said really. the Methuselah of the Football League, just carries on, doesn't he? As you said before, it's not just what he brings, and he does bring a lot. It's the standard he sets for the other players, for the younger players. If you're 20 and you look after yourself, you can have another 17 years. You don't have to retire at 30, 31. And he's getting better as well. Like he's a lot of players of that ilk, of that age, they sort of, as they get older, they lose the pace, but they adapt, and it's more about the touch and the reading of the game. He's still rapid. He hasn't lost his pace, and he could also, if he was, I think the age is the one thing that's kept him here. I think if he was a bit younger, someone would have snapped him up again and gone to a higher level again, or he'd still be at Shrewsbury, because he plays like a 27-year-old, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a good season to see him get another 12-month extension. He's somebody I'd quite like to see, go into that sort of player coach mode, really, because he is so influential around the squad and around the club, and you can see that other players, the amount of respect they have for him, and he is still decent. Scored some great goals. I mean, the goal, if you've seen it against Crewe away, where he curls it into the top corner, was almost like a chip. Unbelievable. He's won us games on his own, and when he came back again, signed under the previous regime, was 35, people saying, oh, it's jobs for the boys, Stanley retirement home, and he's turned out to be one of the best signs we've made in the Football League era, really, arguably.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of the recruitment, I mean, mapping out the squad at the moment, I would imagine you're looking at about another 4 or 5 players required, depending on who goes.
That's the key. I think we'll have to get some players out before more come in. Again, it's like a broken record, just that budget. It's we can't carry bodies. I think the young players will be used to flesh out the bench, but we certainly need some defensive reinforcements. A replacement for Keneally. You can never replace Keneally, but another sort of central midfielder who can have that role where he sort of slows the game down, isn't going to do anything spectacular, just keeps things ticking over. And depending on how the young lads do, we might need a more sort of seasoned striker as well. I think because a lot of those strikers are very sort of raw.
Maybe someone towards the end of their career who's got lots of Football League experience under their belt, that kind of profile.
Yeah, somebody sort of dropping down from the Championship once another year, that kind of thing, or somebody who, again, the way smaller clubs often sort of entice these bigger fish is through that sort of player coach route. We've done that before with the likes of sort of Paul Cook. Managed to get him to drop down from the Championship to the National League. Liam Richardson, yeah. So it is a good. I mean, and people do. There is a culture around the club that is relatively unique, and players do like it. I mean, what was the chap? Nicky Hunt, ex Premier League Bolton. He came for a while, and it was when we were still tin pot, wash your own kits, that kind of thing. And he absolutely loved it. And he
what
still
do you mean when, Callum?
About it. Oh no, they just don't wash them now. So, no, yeah. They don't have to put 50p on the side anymore, or ask for the Wi-Fi code anymore. Things have changed. But I'm hopeful we'll get a few bodies in, and we'll be ready for the start of the season. We'll have a good go, as we always do.
Have a good go then. Expectations. I mean, difficult. It's an odd word, isn't it? Expectations with regards to Accrington. I mean, is there a bit more of a feeling of you want to be kind of low, try and strive to be a bit more lower mid-table kind of area?
I think if you're realistic, I think everybody who finishes in the bottom half, especially for a smaller club, I think the first aim is to get to the 50 points.
Of course.
I think then you go, okay, can we flirt with the playoffs? And it sounds ridiculous given the season we had, but you've got to understand that, as I said before, we haven't won a Saturday 3:00 home game since early October. Now, any other season, arguably, that you're in big trouble. You cut adrift, and that just shows how strong the away form was.
Yeah.
So we can we don't have to have brilliant home form. We can just win a third of those games. It suddenly puts you in and about the playoff, not the sort of top half, certainly. Sort of flirting with the playoffs. I think when all's said and done, I think we'll have a better season. I think we'll come around, 13th, 14th. But again, it's how you perceive things, isn't it? So last year wasn't the most enjoyable, but we stayed up and we played at Anfield. So you can argue it is one of the most successful seasons we've had since being in the league, if you want to look at it that way. The League One, the League One years, to have half a decade there, I think spoiled us slightly. I remember thinking we'll just have 1 year here, it'll be great, and we'll go back down. But you forget how good we were. You alluded to them. We had sort of top half finishes.
Yeah.
You know, when I was looking the other day, when the fella at Ipswich, when he took over, we were above them in the league. Like it's
Yeah.
those seasons are like a fever dream now, and I don't think it's fair to use those as the yardstick, because they were our sort of golden years, really. You just want to see a competitive club that has a go, doesn't, brings a bit of joy to the town and is on its day exciting to watch. That'll do me. But if I was a gambling man, I would say around 14th, 15th, I think we'll finish.
Interesting. Yeah, I think if you can finish slightly higher than last season, but continue to develop some players and go into next summer with some high potential assets to sell on, and then go again and reinvest, then I think that would be a really productive 12 months.
I think it would be nice just to be safe with more than 2 games to go.
Yeah,
to have a last month where we can sort of just experiment a little bit would be nice.
Yeah, for sure. So, I've got to do my 1 to 24 predictions at the end of July, Callum, and one of my processes for doing that is grading each club out of 10, marking each club out of 10 on 14 different categories that I think are going to determine how well they do. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shout a category at you and give me a number between 1 and 10 for where you think Stanley are at with it.
Okay.
Ownership.
Going with the big fish.
I know, yeah.
6.
6, okay. I'm surprised. Infrastructure.
8.
8.
For us, 8, yeah.
Playing budget.
0. 1.
1. Management.
Probably could do better category. 6.
6, okay. I'll go. Next one is the goalkeeping department. Let's presume Michael Kelly's going to be the number 1 next year.
6.
6, okay. Defence.
7.
7 for the defence. Midfield. Let's include the wing backs in this.
7.
7, okay. Attack.
6.
6 for the attack. Squad depth. Let's say 5 additions come in between now and the end of the window.
7, not too bad. 7.
Okie dokie. Squad stability.
8. It's a good camp. They're not going anywhere.
Nice. Growth potential. It is quite a young squad, which is quite an exciting.
Yeah, give that an 8 again.
8 again. Great. Next one is team spirit.
8. Never been a problem for us, that.
Nice. Fitness.
7.
7 for fitness. And quality.
6.
6. Okay.
More graft and stuff.
Nice, that's helpful. Got a few more final questions just to round off, Callum. What's the biggest reason to believe in Accrington Stanley right now?
Oh, I think you just got to look at the history of the club. We have a history of punching above our weight. We always have done since Stanley Villa kicked a ball around in 1891. We're the club that wouldn't die for a reason. And, historically, our best seasons have always been when everybody else writes us off. Nobody predicted that league win in 2018. We're predicted to come between 22nd and 24th by most people. So hopefully that's an omen again going forward. Biggest reason for doubt? Budget, playing budget. Who can we attract who's of a sort of football league standard worries me. And finally, just how confident are you feeling for next season with 2 weeks to go until the start of pre-season? Yeah, I'm always sort of cheerfully optimistic in this period because I like to look at that table alphabetically. We're always top. If the season ends now, we win the league. It's that simple. Especially with Wimbledon gone, with the AFC go above us, which is annoying me, but we won't go there. I'm confident it's going to be better than last year. I'm confident we'll win a few more home games. Being greedy, I'd like another cup run because the thing with Stanley is you sort of know the odds of a great league season are quite low. So the cups tend to be a bit of joy because you've always got that puncher's chance.
Mm.
And to go to Anfield after years of getting to the fourth round and getting, Chumley Town away was quite quite nice for a change. So I'm gonna be relatively positive. I'm gonna say we'll have a good couple of cup runs and we'll come sort of, as I said before, we'll flirt with the top half. Quietly optimistic.
Nice. Well, Callum, thanks so much for joining us. Look forward to hearing more of the Raw Milk podcast as well. So keep that stuff up. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. If you've enjoyed what we do here, get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. And we'll see you again for another Summer Deep Dive very soon.
Take care.